Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakadyana Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Tutasaka Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam pasru taranga bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Romanchakam pasru taranga bhajo Vande Guru Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringara Tanama Niramarjanado Shri Vigraha Juktasya Bhaktamsya Neyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Kridaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Shiradikama Vabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Madhura Lila Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charana Ne Kunja Yono Ratike Visidhyai Jayali Bheri Jokti Apekshaniya Ne Kunja Yono Tatrati Daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Vrindam Galavasya Sakshat Haridena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastatava Bhataiva Sadhavi Ruktastatava Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Sya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Dayam Stuvam Tasya Dasatri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dayam Stuvam Tasya Dasatri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dasatri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Vattatari Sata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Premanande Haribo Jaya Vishwapar Param Prabhajaka Acharya Ashtottara Sarasi Shimad ISKCON Pratishtha Bhiviti Samstapaka Acharya Vaishnava Ceremony Gaura Priyajan Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhay Charavindra Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Shaila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Premanama Sankirtanika Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinanda Nishman Gurangas Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai Yuga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihatindanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabam Vrindavan Mathur Dham Ki Jai Dear Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nilmadhava Ki Jai Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakradam Ki Jai Paramakaruna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kan Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Brinda Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Bolo Shmati Radharani Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gauri Pramanandi Haribo All glories to the Assembly Bodies All glories to the Assembly Bodies All glories to the Assembly Bodies All glories, all glories, all glories. Shri Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praglada Lada Dayine. Hiranyakashiporvakshaha. Hiranyakashiporvakshaha. Shilantanka nakalaye. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. Yato yato yamitato Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hirdaye Narsimha. Narasimhamadim saranam prapate. Simhamadim saranam prapate. Tavakara kamala vare nakam abhuta singam dalita hiranyakashipu tanubringam Keshavatiyartha Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Abudashingam Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanavringa Keshavatita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jayo Keshavatita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Keshavatita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jayo Narasimhade Jayo Narasimhade Jayo Narasimhade Jayo Narasimhade Jayo Nisingade Jayo Nisingade Jayo Nisingade Jayo Nisingade Jayo Prahlad Maharaj 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Pada Sarvagna Vinashna Karishingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Hari Pramanande Hari 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 Bol Shri Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasidebai Priyayai Kesavasatya Krishna Bhakti Paridevi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasidebai Priyayai Kesavasatya Vishnu Bhakti Paridevi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Vrindadevi ki. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna. Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi. Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi. Je tomara sharanala tara vancha purna. Kripa kari kara tare Vrindavanavasi. Tumi kripa kari kara tare Vrindavanavasi. Namo Namaha Moraiya Vira Vilas Kunja Diyova. Nayane Vivo Sada Jugala Ruparasi. Eini Vedanadhara Shakirayana Gatakara. Sevayadi Karadiye Koroni Jadasi Tina Krishna dase ko eye namorao Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadai Navasi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadai Navasi Tanika Nisapapani Brahmahatari Kanisha Tani Pani Pranasanti Pradati Napadi Padi Janikani sapapani brahmatari kanisa Tani tani pranasanti pradachina pade pade Janikani sapapani brahmatari kanisa Tani tani pranasanti pradachina pade pade Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Nittai Gora Haribo 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 Nittai Gora Haribo Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namah Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Praridevi Sattvataya Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Praridevi Sattvataya Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Oh, Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna prays. May I always fame your love, Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Bhavana Bhavani Nirvapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitarana Vidya Vado Jiva Ananda Mudivardhanam Pratiparam Purnamrita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shakti Tatra Pita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Krita Visitava Kripaya Bhagavan Namati Durdhaivam Idrishamya Jani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Ramanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Pramai Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavata Bhakti Rahaitu Kitoi Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Paritama Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sitaduri Sadrisham Vichintayo Nayanam Galarashu Bharaya Padanam Gadugadara Rudaya Gira Pulakair Chitam Bapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavisati Jogaitam Nimeshenam Chakrisa Pravasaitam Shunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahename Asli Shava Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshna Mahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadhatulam Patu Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shmate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nivrishesha Shunnavadi Pasatyadeshatarine Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurateshe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon.
It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names, like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself low as a straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I will fall in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the Lord's feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even handle me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristakam Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and presence of Vedic version. 5. Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances to all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone. They are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Bancha, Kalpatarvascha,
Vasindubhyevacha Patsana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna. I'm sorry. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai Nama Tasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapritam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachkamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Saivaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pradam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shiva Savani Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhude Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Primadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Shri Guru Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Guruvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Abhisidanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambha De Padambu Jayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gaura Shakti Sarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhamestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mamamanda Materkati Matsarva Swapadambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shrimad Radha Sila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevamana Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasaran Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksa Vrite Susurabi Abhibalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Gananda Matarinda Davalasam Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Kotikam Aniya Visesa Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Kalikalabhilasam Shamanti Bangalalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayora Tapi Manasomari Pungamanam Sopyastiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanta Kotim Yaj Chakti Rasta Jagadanta Jaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Jayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Mevinikamai Pratitai Suvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhista Birya Evani Jarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hridayesu Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Chintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menitishtan Anavatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamam Yo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabhapavato Jagadanta Kotim Yaschakti Kotisva Sisma Stadi Vipliti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Sesta Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanta Vichsatani Stute Trigunya Tad Vishayaveda Vitaya Manam Satvavalam Sattvam Vipara Sattvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasriya Praninam Pratipalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijdamni Talechatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Satesya Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vichasya Yena Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shristista Tipalaya Sadhava Saktirekas Jaya Vyasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupma Vyasya Chesta Sesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjaya Tena Hitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambhutama Pitata Samapaitikatya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Dev Hita Santam Abhyapetya Dipaya Devi Vita Hita Samana Dharma Yastadra Geva Hita Vishnutaya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnava Jalibhajati Sma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Paramsama Vortim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Avalambya Shivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansaya Yasya Kalavi Sesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesini Jesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prikatayata Pitadvrata Krata Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vidaya Kumbat Bandwe Panama Samaya Stakadadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agni Mahi Gaganamambu Maruti Satcha Kalasta Tatma Malasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagalagrahanam Raja Samasta Sunamurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nijaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patakavati Asta Jiva Yadata Matari Bhava Pakadapabhava Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavenda Masaja Pranayadi Viti Vasaya Moha Guru Guru Vasavi Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadhusim Tanamapareta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Sriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Vajramabu Mishtintamani Ganama Hitrayam Amritam Kata Ganam Nadyam Gamanam Apivansi Priyasaki Chiranandam Shoti Param Apita Dasvadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bisha Vidishrabi Vyascha Sumaham Nimesa Dakyo Bhava Jitina Hiya Trapi Samaya Vajay Sritadvi Pamtamaham Iha Golokam Ityam Vidanta Stesan Takshiti Viralacha Rakatipai Guru Vastika prayers, Kijay. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest right to extinguish it. So the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire material existence I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters, an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting holy name, dancing next, singing, playing music instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the relish of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha, and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress their deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. After my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal paths on Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tastes or arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored is much the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all real scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives a benediction in Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 23. Shri Sukha Uvacha Itit Udadvad Upakarnya Shritam tu saham vadam Jnanena samayat chata Sokam utpatitam Buddha. Sri Sukha Uvacha. Sri Sukha Goswami said, Iti, thus, Udavat, from Udava, Upakarnya, hearing, Sridam, of friends and relatives, Dushaham, unbearable, Vadam, annihilation, Jnanena, by transcendental knowledge, Asamayat, pacified himself, Shata, Vidura, Shokam, bereavement, Utpatitam, arisen, Buddha, the learned. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vidura was informed that the result of the battle of Kurukshetra was the annihilation of his friends and relatives, as well as the destruction of the Yadu dynasty, and also the passing away of the Lord. All these hurled him into bereavement for the time being. But because he was highly advanced in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to pacify himself by enlightenment. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, due to our long association with bodily relationships, bereavement on account of the annihilation of friends and relatives is not at all astonishing. But one has to learn the art of subduing such bereavement with higher transcendental knowledge. The talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset, and Vidura was now further advanced in knowledge due to his association with Uddhava. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. Well, the transcendental knowledge, therefore, is extremely important in order to remain in Krishna consciousness and not be phased or influenced by the constant, what you would call, roller coaster of ups and downs in life. That roller coaster effect bewilders most people. But someone who has transcendental knowledge understands that nothing can happen without the sanction of the Lord. Not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord, as they say. So therefore, the devotee is not bewildered by the successes and failures in life, because the devotee knows that the Lord has a plan, and that plan is going to be revealed over time. No one can really understand what the plan of the Lord is, but the devotee understands that by patiently considering in regulated and steady devotional service, all issues in life will be resolved, and that the Lord will always be the protector and guide of the devotee. So how are we guided? We're guided by transcendental knowledge that we receive on a daily basis by hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This transcendental knowledge is spoken of a lot in Bhagavad Gita. For example, it says in the 5th chapter, Yukta karma phala tyakva santim apnoti naistikim ayukta kama karena phale sakto nibadyate. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality. That is without knowledge of the Absolute Truth. Krishna is the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane, they are transcendental, and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness, but one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. Realization that there is no existence beside Krishna is the platform of peace and fearfulness. This is an amazing purport by Srila Prabhupada, and this is explaining how we can always remain without being bewildered, regardless of all the ups and downs in life, or the roller coaster effect of material happiness and distress, love and hate, success and failure. Actually, Prabhupada quotes the proverb, failure permits us to make spiritual advancement. How is that? Well, when we fail, there's a reason why. There can be two reasons. One is because of karma, and the other is because Krishna has a plan that we may not understand at the time, but the devotee is not discouraged by failure. Failure is the pillar of success, as Prabhupada says. Now that means a lot, and most people would not agree that failure is the pillar of success. However, devotees are not afraid of situations in which there's a failure, because they know the Lord has a plan, and therefore they continue steadily in devotional service. Whereas someone who's a materialist will become very frustrated and find many reasons to blame someone else or ultimately God for the failure, and they become angry with God. This is exactly what Charles Darwin did. He was a, what you would say, like a good Hindu. He was a good Christian. He would go to church, and they would sing hymns in the church, and he would be praying, God, give us this day our daily bread. So in other words, God is the order supplier, and religion is to be engaged in order to come through different difficulties by the help of God. So therefore, there's no ecstasy in that type of worship. There's simply, please help me, I'm in trouble. Please help me, I want to achieve this result. Please help me so I can do this or do that. So there's always some demand being made by the person who's praying with the idea that God is the order supplier. that, of course, is not really a prayer. It's just a demand. And God should not be considered as the order supplier. An order means you make an order and he should supply it. But it's just the opposite. He makes an order and we should follow it. You see, there's a big difference between the two. So when you say that God is the order supplier, that means that you are dictating to him what you want, and you want him to satisfy it. So this is also, it's very interesting, in the New Age religions, the so-called gurus or enlightened ones, they teach you that you can order the universe. Look that up. New Age teachers claim that a person can order the universe. So they actually teach like that. You can order the universe. They don't exactly say God, but they say the universe. But what is the universe? Everything is coming from Krishna, so it's the same thing. Do you see something there?
How to order the universe?
How to order the universe, yeah. What's it say? Into the microphone.
So there was a book written.
No, closer to your mouth.
There was a book written, How to Order the Universe.
Yeah.
It's in Amazon.
Oh, that's good. We can order it from Amazon.
So I'm trying to see what the
author says.
yes.
They teach you. These are the New Age gurus. They teach you. They're not gurus. They're kangaroos. They teach you how to order the universe. They write a book on it.
Is it a fiction? I'm trying to understand. So this is some novel. Yeah, this one is. I mean, they use the title, but it's a novel that is written. It's a fiction. So let me see if we can find.
Okay. Anyway, we see that this ordering God. So when someone prays, there, and like I said, there's no ecstasy in that type of so-called religious activity or thought. It's always about there's something wrong, help me, right? Or I want something, help me, or immediately I need this to be done, and therefore you have to do this. So that's not really spiritual. That's just a business dealing or a type of you could call it, dire urgencies that you're imposing on God. So this purport, if you understand this one purport and verse, you can see through all that sophistry, false teaching. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So right away, the first qualification is steadily devoted. Devotees should always be steadily devoted, engaging in sadhana bhakti. There's this one phony guru. He was teaching that the goal of life is to develop spontaneous love for God. So that statement he's making is correct, right? So then he said, and I can give it to you right away. So right there he's wrong. Why is he wrong? Well, if you read Nectar Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami, he says that first we must follow sadhana bhakti. And when the guru thinks that you are qualified, he will teach you raganuga bhakti. Raganuga bhakti is a spontaneous attraction to Krishna out of love and devotion. But one must reach that stage gradually through sadhana bhakti, following rules and regulations, right, and being steady. So this idiot, he comes up with the idea, well, if that's the goal, I can give it to you right away. Say, and he turned out to be a sexual predator, and he ran away from the United States, and is probably still hiding in India somewhere. And his guru was, I have to think of his name. Anyway, I'll think of his name. A very famous guru in India. He's also a phony. But they're playing around with this Raganuga Bhakti, immediate Raganuga, right? Kripalu, right? You know him, right? So he was the guru, and this predator, his name was Keshava Swami. So, and they had ashram in Texas, near Houston, outside of Houston, and as Keshava Swami, he started the organization. He called it the International Society for Divine Love. He didn't say International Society for Krishna Consciousness, right? He said divine love, because that's what he's teaching. He's teaching, it's Raganuga Bhakti right away. So this is going on. All kinds of deviations are there today, and all kinds of fertile brains of these idiots come up with basically things that are against the Shastric evidence. So this verse says, the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. That means you will have steady peace. Nothing will be able to impede it or in any way reverse it. Unadulterated peace, because he offers the result of all activities to me. So this is Krishna speaking. This is the 5th chapter, 12th verse. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Okay, so when one is not in sync with Krishna, they become greedy, and they want the fruits of their labor, and that is the, let's say, the undoing of that person. They will become entangled by selfishly wanting the result for themselves and not offering it to Krishna. So then Prabhupada says the difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the person in Krishna consciousness is attached to Krishna, whereas the person who is in bodily consciousness is attached to the results of his activities. So, what does that mean exactly? That means that, let's say, you get, as a preacher, you get a big donation. So you say, okay, well, the way I count things is 1 for Krishna, 2 for me. 2 for Krishna, 4 for me. 4 for Krishna, 8 for me. And 8 for Krishna, 16 for me. Now, there are devotees like that. They pilfer. Pilfer means you steal. In the name of Krishna, they collect money, and then they divide it 2 times for them and only 1 time for Krishna, right? So they can maintain their charade of looking like a devotee, and they'll give statistics. Well, I collected this much money this month, but actually they're only reporting one third of it, right? 2/3 they put away in their Swiss bank account or some bank account somewhere, or they send it back to India to buy a house or something like that. So there are many phonies like that, masquerading to be devotees, but actually they're just bunyas. They're just businessmen. And they get entangled. So, entangled in what? Entangled in karma, by karma, because they're actually thieves. Okay, so it says, the person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety. Yeah. At night when they go to sleep, the devotee has no anxiety. He's not awake all night worrying, oh, tomorrow this may happen, that may happen. This person is my enemy, he's going to do this, and I have to be very careful. They're not worried at all, because they are completely dedicated to Krishna. So they get a good night's sleep, they wake up rejuvenated to chant Hare Krishna and engage in a full day in Krishna consciousness, and they don't get tired. They can be working all day long, 16 hours, 18 hours. They don't get tired. They can't wait. In fact, they regret going to sleep. They say, oh, what a waste of time that is. I could do so much service. So, but still, you have to keep the body and the soul together. So if you act in such a way that you damage the body, well, that'll be an impediment to your service, right? So you don't want to do that. But on the other hand, you don't overindulge taking care of the body. See, it's just like a person, you see them. You go in different neighborhoods and you see, someone's polishing his car, right? And spending, maybe an inordinate amount of time polishing the car and doing this and doing that for the car. Now, we shouldn't keep the car dirty, but some people overdo it. They'll wax the car, they'll do this, they'll do that, they get this gadget, that gadget, put it on the car. So they're overemphasizing their attachment to a mundane thing like that. But there are many people like that overemphasize things. They want everything, and they want the latest gadgets, they want the latest this, latest that, the latest model of this, the latest model of that. And it's a waste of energy and time. So here it says, such people become entangled in the result because they're attached to the results of the activity. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the result of an activity is explained as being functioning in the conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. So you see, here in the verse today, what's his name? Yeah. Vidura had knowledge. And although all these devastating things happened, the whole dynasty, Kuru dynasty, got wiped out. And the whole Yadu dynasty got wiped out, right? And Krishna left the planet. What could be more devastating than that, right? And he was forlorn for some time. He is explained here. He had overwhelming bewilderment, but he pacified his overwhelming bewilderment by the dint of his transcendental knowledge. So, how do you get the transcendental knowledge? If you don't have transcendental knowledge, how are you going to pacify severe bereavement? It's not going to happen. That's why people commit suicide, because they have some severe bereavement and they can't pacify it, so they kill themselves. Now, we saw this in 1928 when there was this gigantic stock market crash, right? Stock brokers were jumping out of the high-rise buildings, jumping out the windows of these high-rise buildings, committing suicide. It happened a lot. It also happened in 2008 when the stock market crashed. People were killing themselves, jumping out of windows. So, why? Because their whole life is based on enjoying the results of their work for their selfish interests, not giving anything to Krishna, and just selfishly indulging in sense gratification. Another example of that is Marilyn Monroe. She was a very famous, very beautiful lady, and everyone was like fawning over her, and she committed suicide. And Ernest Hemingway, another very famous American author, he committed suicide. Right? They both, Marilyn Monroe and Hemingway, committed suicide because they did not see how they could be happy with sense gratification anymore. Right? So Hemingway, because he was much older than Marilyn Monroe when he committed suicide, and he knew that he couldn't enjoy sense gratification the way he had for so many years. He committed suicide. Marilyn Monroe is much younger, but she went through a lot of difficult situations, especially with the Kennedy brothers. And when she was rejected by them, she committed suicide. So we see that when people have this heavy bereavement, they think of killing themselves. But here, Vidura had extremely heavy bereavement, but because he had transcendental knowledge, he pacified that bereavement, and he continued in devotional service. We should learn a lesson from this. Without transcendental knowledge, we will not be able to navigate through all the ups and downs in material life. We'll get stuck by some severe loss, and usually people at that point, they blame God, they become angry at God, and they become very, what you would call vindictive, and they commit suicide. Okay, so Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. Now, why is that? Because we do whatever is best to be Krishna conscious. That is the criterion. So, let's say you're living near the temple here, and you could buy a house cheaper, let's say in some other, like Bothell. Sometimes it's considered, nowadays it's not Bothell anymore because it's become very expensive. But let's say Black Diamond, you could buy a cheaper house in Black Diamond, right? And a lot of people do that. But it's more expensive here, and it's been expensive for a long time. But the facility of being able to walk to the temple at any time is so important in the life of a devotee that he will not take advantage of a cheaper house somewhere else that'll be far away and won't permit him or her or his family to come easily to the temple. So those are decisions based on being free of duality. So it's cheaper in Black Diamond than in Sammamish. Oh, let me buy a house in Black Diamond. I'll sell my house here. I'll buy one in Black Diamond. I'll have money left over also, and I can spend that money on more sense gratification, right? No, the devotee wouldn't think like that. He said, well, why should I move far away? Then I won't be able to come anytime I want to the temple. This is a great facility living right next to the temple. So I will, if I have to work a little harder, I'll work harder. But I don't want to anything to impair this great benediction of being close to the temple and being able to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So, therefore, devotee is not in duality. He's not troubled by duality because he'll always do what is best for Krishna consciousness. This is explained also in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, where it says, 18th chapter, 64th verse, Anukulyena sankalpa pratikulyena varjanam. So this Anukulyena sankalpa means one will do whatever is favorable for Krishna consciousness, pratikulyena varjanam, and he'll not do anything that's not favorable to Krishna consciousness, right? So those are the two cardinal rules for being free of the confusion caused by duality. One is no longer in duality. They'll only do things that are favorable for Krishna consciousness. And they won't do anything that's unfavorable for Krishna consciousness. And then, Raksisyaititi, Vishwaso, one always depends on the protection of Krishna and the goodwill of Krishna. And then, after that is Gopjitve Varanam Tata. Whatever happens, he accepts it as the mercy of Krishna. It might be good, it might be bad. But he accepts it as the mercy of Krishna, and he continues in devotional service, especially if something bad happens. He becomes more, it's an impetus to be more severe, let's say, rigidly following the regulative principles, and more fixed in devotional service. And then Atmaniksepa Karpanye Sadvida Saranam Gata. So he remains very gentle and steady in devotional service, and it doesn't waver. So that is what you would call the process of surrender, saranagati, in these 6 points. And the first point is accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness. That frees one from dualities. Okay, therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. But one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. So this phrase should be memorized. Profit calculation for sense gratification. Okay. So, like for example, if someone says, well, if I can buy something cheap in China and sell it expensive in America, look at all the money I'm going to make, right? And so that's profit calculation. And the only thing I have to do is just import it and convince people to buy it, right? And I'll become rich. Buy cheap, sell expensive, right? Well, that's the dream of every capitalist. And because they want to have that dream come true, they will also cheat. Like, for example, many people have manipulated commodities in order to make a lot of money. So there's on the stock market, there's different types of stocks and different types of ways of gambling on the stock market. So one of the most biggest gambles is commodity market. So the commodity market is all about commodities like wheat and oil and gold, silver. These are all commodities, right? And the price of these commodities can fluctuate in different ways. Now, one way to make a lot of money is if you have a lot of assets, you buy up a complete production of a product in 1 year's production. So let's say it's wheat. So you buy so much wheat that the price of it goes up because it becomes scarce. That's the way capitalists make money. They create artificial scarcity of something, right? Now, why does oil, all of a sudden the oil price goes way up, and then later on it comes way down, and then it goes up again, right? That's all manipulation, because capitalists make money when there's scarcity of a commodity, and the price goes up. And they can artificially do it by buying up a whole, let's say, a whole production of or a large amount of a commodity and storing it and waiting for the price to go up because people can't buy it. So they start paying more for that product, right? And when it goes to the top price, they sell it. See? So these are very, very nasty ways that people manipulate the commodity market. And there's other ways of cheating in the stock market. But the commodity market is one of the biggest risks for investment because you don't know what the forces are. Like, for example, if somebody like Russia, let's say, for example, or England or one of these countries, or China, they decide to buy a large quantity of gold, immediately the price of gold will go up because they've taken out a huge amount of that gold from the market. Right? And then if they dump it, then the price would go down, right? So there are manipulations like that going on all the time, and people just don't understand the markets. Okay, so, but the devotee, it doesn't matter. Like one time I had a friend of mine, and the stock market went down, and I asked him, I said, well, are you okay? He said, yeah. I said, why you ask? I said, well, the stock market went down. And he started laughing. He said, look, I don't invest in the stock market. I invest in my house. I paid off my mortgage. I invest in paying off all my credit card debts, and I invest in paying off cars. I don't buy cars on credit. I pay it cash. I pay for them cash. He said, so I'm not hurt by the stock market going up or down. I'm not worried about making more money. I'm not worried about losing money because I don't invest in the stock market. And what I do is pay cash for whatever I buy. So he's living at home without debt. So he doesn't have, he's a materialist, but he doesn't have any anxiety because he has no debts, right? And he doesn't spend more money than what he has. So if he can't buy a Tesla because he doesn't have enough money, he doesn't care. He'll buy a used car and he'll be satisfied with it, right? Because he won't spend more than what he has. Right? Well, I'm not saying that everyone should follow that strategy, but the point is that a person that lives at home without debt is a happy person. They're not in anxiety, right? It's when you have a lot of debt. Like his daughter, who got married, and they decided to buy a big house, and they bought a big house, and with a big mortgage. And after about 3 years, because of the economy, this thing, that thing, somebody lost a job. They couldn't pay the mortgage anymore. They lost the house. They lost all the money that they invested in it. You see. So that was different than the father. The father would never, do that because he only spend what he has and never go beyond that. Okay, so here it says, therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness, but one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. Realization that there is no existence beside Krishna is the platform of peace and fearfulness. Wow, a short one-paragraph purport with such a gigantic meaning as this is called Vedic literature. Even one sentence is so pregnant with knowledge that it's enough to liberate a person from the cycle of birth and death. This is why the Vedic literature is so transcendentally wonderful. If we can simply meditate on it and think about it seriously, it changes our whole life. It changes our whole outlook on everything. So then in the next verse, 5:13 says, when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, He resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. So what are the 9 gates? 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, a mouth, genital, and an anus. So we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, that's 6, a mouth, that's 7, genital and anus, it's 8 and 9. So those are the 9 portals to enter or to come out of the body. So it says here, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. Does that mean he's a lazy bum? No. It means that he's not working for sense gratification. He's engaging in devotional service. There's a difference between engaging in devotional service and working for sense gratification. Right? Working for sense gratification is working. Engaging in devotional service is not working. It's action, transcendental action that has no reaction to it, no material reaction, just spiritual benefit. So that's different than working for sense gratification. Okay, and let's read this purport real quickly. The embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activities of the body, or the figurative city of body, are conducted automatically by its particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions of dictated by the modes of nature, if he so desires. If he so desires. So in other words, when you come to class, you're hearing something different than what's being said outside. You know, like for example, we're not saying you can order the universe, right? That's not what we're teaching here. We're saying we should follow Krishna's order, right? There's a big difference between trying to order the universe, which means you're ordering God, right? Or you're following God's dictates. There's a big difference between the two. So the soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions if he so desires. So we're learning by listening to Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita to change our desires from ordering the universe to desiring to follow as strictly as possible Krishna's teachings and Krishna's instructions. Right? Owing to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. Yeah, we forget. You know, as soon as we're born and, you know, Uncle so-and-so comes and says, hey, goo goo gaga, and baby smiles. And he says, look, he's smiling, you know, and hugs the baby and gives it a big kiss with his garlic mouth. All of a sudden, the baby forgets that, you know, I have a soul, the eternal soul, and that I am this body, part of this marriage, then part of this family. This is my family. This is my race. This is my ethnicity. This is me, right? And grows up like that, and you know, goes through whole life thinking, I, me, and mine, aham mameti, I, me, and mine. So, therefore, when one takes the Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, you know, his thoughts, his thought process, his desires, they're all changed now. He lives happily within the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates are mentioned as follows. Navadware pure dehi, hamso leila yate bahi, vasisarvasya lokasya stavarasya charasya cha. This is all beautiful Sanskrit poetry, of course. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of a living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, a mouth, the anus, and the genitals. The living entity, in his conditioned stage, identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord himself, within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Srutasvatara Upanishad 3.18. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. So, what's the difference? Instead of identifying with Uncle so-and-so, and this family, and this ethnicity, and this race, and this nationality, and this thing, and that thing. The other day I was talking to this gentleman, his brother of a devotee who was visiting here, and we were having a nice discussion, and then he told me that he's a member of the RSS, right? And then he explained, in India, it's not the RSS, it's called something else, and outside of India, it's called RSS. And I said, "Oh, so you're worshiping the flag?" And he looked at me when I said that. He said, "Yeah, we offer our allegiance to the flag of India." I said, "And you chant Vande Mataram." He looked at me again, he said, "Where's he going with this?" I said, yeah, we chant Vande Mataram. And I said, "This is nonsense." He said, "What?" I said, "This is nonsense. You should worship Krishna, not the flag of India. And you should be chanting Hare Krishna, not Vande Mataram." So he didn't like that, but there was a little bit of respect, so he didn't get angry, but he was definitely put off by it. But that's what it is. What do you mean worship a flag? I mean, how many flags are there in the world, right? And everyone's going to worship their flag, And what about Vande Mataram? By the way, the Muslims don't accept Vande Mataram in India. They don't chant that. They think it's nonsense, So here we say, if you choose the wrong symbols and the wrong ethos or wrong culture, then you go in the wrong direction. It's just like buying a new car and driving in the wrong direction. It's better to have an old car but go in the right direction, right? So this point, the living entity in his conditioned state identifies himself with the body. But when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. That should be our motto. I don't want to identify with the body. I don't want to identify with any false concept of the self. I want to identify with Krishna, who's in my body, in my heart, as Paramatma. And I'm not that I am Krishna, but I am related to Krishna eternally. He has an eternal soul. I have an eternal soul. I'm part and parcel of the Lord. That's who I really am. That's my real identity. See? This is what we teach. This is what Bhagavad Gita is talking about. And if we can understand these two verses and purports today, 5:12 and 5:13, we have the whole concept of Krishna consciousness. All right. So I'll stop right there. Are there any questions? And by the way, we have peace. We have steadiness in devotional service and peace and no anxiety, because we know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he's going to protect his devotees. So are there any questions? Yes, Gopal Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol, Prabhu.
My question is, what does Muslim mean?
Muslim means somebody who is worshiping Allah as God.
Hmm.
Yeah. It might have some other meaning that I don't know, but that's my understanding. So he's worshiping. They're also worshiping Krishna, but they call him Allah, the greatest. Right? And but their knowledge of Allah is not complete. But it's enough to believe that God exists. So then it becomes a monotheistic religion. What's a monotheistic religion? You believe in one God, right? So that is the benefit of being a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew. They all believe in one God. Right? But their understanding of that one God can differ and maybe even not being complete. But the fact that they believe in one God makes them, it is a Vaishnava religion. Because Vaishnavism believes in one God. Therefore, being a Jew or following Jewish religion or Islam or Christianity is better than Hinduism. Because the Hindus don't believe in one God. They believe there's many, many gods, right? Vaishnavas believe there's one God. Right? So therefore, the followers of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity are more close to Vaishnavism than Hindus. Did you ever hear that before? Huh?
But Maharaj, they are more of impersonal side, still they are closer?
Well, there's nothing more impersonal than believing there's many, many gods, right?
How you can become God.
Huh?
How you can also become God.
Or you can become God, yeah. No. So they are Vaishnava type religions. They believe in one God. Okay. So,
Christianity still talks about God being personal.
yeah, of course, because they say Jesus is the Son of God, so that means God's got to be a person, like His Son, right? No, I mean, even anyway, there's a lot of confusion about the reality of who is Jesus. Was he a man who became God, or was he God who became man? Or they've been arguing this for 2,000 years now, and that's why you have so many different sects of Christians. And they have their own. Each sect has its own interpretation of the Bible and who Jesus is. But anyway, but generally they believe in one God. Right? See, now the Muslims are more, let's say, focused on one God. They reject the idea of the Trinity in Christianity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Or they used to say Holy Ghost. They changed it to Holy Spirit recently because they didn't want to use the word ghost anymore. They used to say for thousands of years Holy Ghost. Anyway, the Muslims reject that. Okay? And they say that there's no such thing as Trinity. It's just one God. Allah, Wahad. Wahad Allah, only one God. So they're more, let's say, one God focused. Right? But again, the full understanding of God is not completely there. But still, they believe in one God. So it is a Vaishnava type religion. Any other questions? That's a good question, Gopal Krishna. Yes.
Oh, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
So my question would be, let's say if I work in a company and then they give me X amount of money,
Yeah.
so what would be the suggested fraction to donate?
What? What?
What would be the suggested amount of money to donate to the temple? A half?
Well, it depends on what your situation is. Let's say you were not married, right? And you were living a minimalist life. That means you just accept what your minimum needs are. So you're not married, so you minimize all you're downsized. Let's put it like that. You're downsized. So you would probably give most of it to the temple if you were a devotee. If you were not a devotee, then you would give a nice donation, no doubt about it. Let's say you had $10 million, you'd give $100,000. But if you're a devotee, you might give, half of it or 3/4 of it. Actually, the recommendation is half. Okay. Now, let's say you're married. Now you have, you're married, you have children, you have to have a house, you have to have a washing machine, a dryer, you have to have refrigerator, you have to have the car, you have to have credit cards, you have to have this, you have to have that. So you wouldn't be able to give half to the temple. So you might give 5% or 10% or 1%, you know. Usually the Christians, especially Catholics, they insist on 10%. And it's called tithing. And people do it. Catholic Church, Catholic adherents actually do 10%. Islam, they have what's called zakat. Once a year they have to be very lavish with charity, especially the poor people. And Jews also, they're very, usually they're very generous with their charity for Jewish organizations, welfare organizations, and for Israel and so forth. So it depends on your situation. But normally, the idea is 50% in Krishna consciousness. Now, maybe you can't do that, so whatever you can do. But when you retire, just like when Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami retired, they were both very high ministers in the government of Hussein Shah in Bengal. And Bengal was a very rich place at that time. So they had a boat full of gold each. And they gave half to Vaishnava causes, and 1/4 to their family, and 1/4 they kept for emergency. But eventually they gave that 1/4 away also. So the recommendation is half.
Yes, March. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
A very different kind of question, Maharaj. I was doing the front desk
But
service.
it's still a question.
It's still a question, yeah. Because it came from one guest who came yesterday. I was in the front desk yesterday.
Okay.
A lot of people came.
Yeah.
Adults, old people.
You were doing Sankirtan yesterday in the temple.
Yes, Maharaj. A lot of people came asking questions, and I was telling about Anand Mela and our classes. So then a family with 2 young boys came. They were full of energy, like 6, 7 years old. And they were like looking around all the pictures, and the picture about Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj sitting, and there is one picture on the glass wall. So this guy was very curious, so he went and looked at, he was asking all kinds of questions. Who are they and what are they doing and all that. And then this other guy suddenly asked me, why is this person not wearing any clothes?
Right, that's a good question.
Yeah, I knew like Sukadeva Goswami is like a self-realized person and all that, but I didn't know how to explain that to a 6-year-old boy. I was thinking, and then...
Well, you know for sure he wasn't a Jain, because Jain saints walk around nude also.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to know what to answer?
Yeah, Narahari Prabhu, he was there nearby, so he came and said that he has a spiritual body, that's why he is not wearing any clothes. And then this young boy, he didn't understand what a spiritual body is, but anyway, they got distracted and ran away. So I was just wondering, how do we answer questions from children like this?
Well, the answer is that Sukadeva Goswami was not in any way attached to the body.
Right.
So he had no desire for sense gratification. Right. Therefore, he put himself in a what we would call avadut situation. Right. Avadut is someone that does not do anything to maintain the body, because they're not attached in any way to the body. So, therefore, they can walk around naked. One time I was in Vrindavan, and this saintly person walked in Vrindavan completely naked. And he wanted to have darshan of our deities, and they let him in naked. They didn't say, no, you can't come here because you don't have any clothes. Why? Because he had a nail through his genital. A nail. And he had his arm, he had kept his arm up like, his right arm up like this for years. Even when he slept, he would always sleep like this. Not laying down, but like this, with his arm up. And that was, a type of tapasya that he was doing, right? And they let him in the temple because he was not attached to the body at all. He was genuinely, a tapasvi. So Sukadeva Goswami was genuinely, it's Sukadeva Goswami. Right? He was genuinely not attached to the body. Therefore, when he encountered a bunch of women that were naked, bathing in a pond, they saw that he was not interested in them at all. That he was, so they didn't even hide their nakedness. But when his father came, Vyasadeva, who's married, they covered themselves right away. So the difference is that the boy was not attached to the body at all, and not interested in any way in sense gratification. And therefore, basically he was like an avadut. He's not doing anything to maintain his body. So that's a very special thing. I mean, don't try and imitate that. Don't walk around naked.
When the question came from a 6-year-old boy, I didn't know
a good question.
If we can explain all these things to him, or
No, but you have to. Explain it simply like that. If you say he has a spiritual body, how can he understand that? He doesn't know what that really means, a spiritual body. But he was not in any way attached to his body, right? So he didn't care about walking with clothes on or naked. The same thing with Rishabhadev. Rishabhadev was always naked, walking around naked, and then people would spit on him and throw stones at him, and pass stool on him. Pass urine and stool on him. He didn't care. So that's called avadut.
Okay.
You don't
Sure.
want to try and imitate that.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Any other questions? Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando Moi Savadana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bai E Bhavatori Ajay
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy
prapti oya oite.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya.
Arana Kori Ho Mane Yasha.
Arana Koriya Maneya Sa.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha.
Jagannatha Pure Savasa.
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित.
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति जगते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
प्रेम भक्ति जगते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित.
वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनार बंधु. श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनार बंधु.
गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनार बंधु.
लोके नाथ लोके जीवाना. आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया.
प्रभु कोर दया देह मोरे पद छाया.
आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया.
प्रभु कोर दया देह मोरे पद छाया.
एबे जास गोशुक त्रिभुवाना. श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना.
प्रभुपाद पतित पावना.
जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद.
जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद.
नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने.
नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने.
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gavani Vacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Pasyatya Nisakarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasad Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Nityananda
Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada.
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva.
Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva.
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
Jagora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitagora Hari Bol. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagacha Astatara Satarashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Bhavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimad Bhakti Namaste Saraswati.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. The attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy to friend the poor and the Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Go to Premanand. If anyone wants to take one of these booklets, you can have it. That booklet explains that display there.